Peace and blessings, family. Your brother, your friend, your dietitian, back again for another installment. Today, I want to talk about books that have changed my life. I just want to start with the first book. It is the Autobiography of Malcolm X. Now, I learned how to read at the age of about 3 years of age. So, my mom and my pops, they put me on to Hooked on Phonics. They put my brothers and sisters and I on Hooked on Phonics, and we learned early on. So we were reading at the age of 3. My younger brother, he was reading in his head at the age of 3. At the age of 4, at the age of 5, he was reading silently, like an ancient soul. So growing up, I always had a knack for reading. I always was inclined to read because my parents had kindled that desire in me from a young age. I remember my pops actually used to take us to the bookstore, and we would just stack up on books, just pile up on books, and that was because he understood that knowledge was power, okay, and the knowledge increases our possibilities. So growing up, I used to read a lot of novels. I used to read a lot of non-fictions too, so I used to read encyclopedias, the children encyclopedias, word puzzles, science, things like that, but in business too. My dad used to introduce me to business principles when I was younger, but one of the main genres was fiction. I used to read a lot of fiction novels and things of that nature. But I didn't come across Malcolm X and Autobiography of Malcolm X until I was about 16 years old, and I was in like the 10th grade in high school. And at this time, I was really into Kanye West, and I still love Kanye West, but I didn't really have a serious outlook on life. I didn't have a wide range, a wide vista, a wide view of life. And somehow, I can't even remember how I came across the Autobiography of Malcolm X. And what intrigued me was that Malcolm X, and the book was thick. I used to read a lot of books, but my Autobiography of Malcolm X, anybody who knows, it's fat. So it's not like something, you just sit. It's not just like leisure reading. It's heavy stuff. So I started it, and it was amazing. And I began diving deep inside of the autobiography. But what I really started to learn was that he was like me, and he was a brother, he was a teacher, he was a guide. Malcolm X, El Haj Malik El-Shabazz, he used to be Detroit Red, so he was a petty criminal, he was a pimp. He used to actually have sex with men's wives, Caucasian men's wives, and get paid to do it while the man watched and gained pleasure from watching his wife have sex with a so-called black man. He had been in and out of prison. He wore his hair in a conch. He hated himself. He thought he had high self-esteem, but in truth, he really hated himself because he was degrading himself. He was altering his physical form and wearing the zoot suits, and he was into the fashion and to the fast money and to all of that until he found himself in prison. When he found himself in prison, he discovered Elijah Muhammad, and Elijah Muhammad taught him about righteous principles, how to be upstanding. He taught him to question the world that he was living in. And another thing that Malcolm X received when he was in prison was an education. He learned how to read the dictionary. He learned how to refine his language. So when I was reading this book, I'm a teenager, I'm cursing and saying, nigga this, nigga that, and I'm wilding out and, just having fun, just living, not analyzing life and being serious about it. Things began to change when I was reading Malcolm X. So I quickly realized that you have to refine your language by refining yourself. You have to question your environment. So I began to question everything around me. Why am I learning this curriculum? Why do I have to live here? Why does my mother have this role? My father has this role. Why am I existing in this condition? I began to ask questions why. I began to critically think. And this is why Autobiography of Malcolm X changed my life. Another thing was I was introduced to a religion outside of Christianity. So I was introduced to Elijah Muhammad taught Malcolm X to call your brother not nigga or punk or buster, but call him a brother. And that changed my mentality about things, because I realized that yes, we are brothers. We are all brothers in humanity. You know, the human creed, the human species, we're all brothers and we're sharing this planet and civilization. Basically, I started learning about how to be more civilized. And so another thing that I really got from Malcolm X was that he refined his diet because he didn't eat pork. So it made me consider, wait a minute, there's things that we should and should not be eating. There's things that are healthy for us and that aren't healthy for us. And so when I was coming up, we used to eat hot Cheetos, chili cheese fries, nachos, hot dogs. Hot dogs are made from the scraps left over at the factory. So, you know, this is the snout and the tail and the skin and anything that's left over, they put that all together and they make hot dogs. So we used to eat everything, but I learned from Malcolm X that no, you shouldn't be eating everything. You should have discipline. You should study. He used to say that anything that you're talking about, you should be able to define. So I started reading the dictionary. And there's a scene in my Autobiography of Malcolm X where he learns how to read and how to study by reading a dictionary. There's a brother he meets in prison who teaches him how to study and read the dictionary. He reads the entire dictionary. That changed my whole idea of studying, because how can a man go from being a pimp, having sex with all these women and doing drugs, selling drugs, making money, to reading a dictionary? They're talking about defining everything that you're about. And so this really changed my perspective on life, right? And so this is why Malcolm X was such a awesome book for me, and why it changed my life. So right now I'm out here and outside. You hear cars going past. You may hear birds. The sun is setting. It's beautiful, and so the lighting is changing. I'm going live. You hear the birds chirping. I'm going live. So we're doing it. Malcolm X, in addition to defining everything that you discuss and understanding and defining everything that you study and everything that you deal with, questioning and being critical about your environment, refining yourself, being disciplined, realizing that your fellow man is your brother. All these things are things that I picked up when I was just 16. These were principles. I was being initiated. I was going through a rites of passage by reading that book. So all my habits changed. I started eating healthier. I started thinking differently. I started treating my brother differently. I stopped using nigga. I stopped using certain words that were demeaning to other people. And I tried to show more respect to people. Also, he talked about sisterhood and brotherhood and how to respect a woman. And I started looking at women differently because of this. It also showed me that anything was possible, because he was taught in school that he was inferior, that his whole race was inferior. This is what Malcolm X was taught. And so it showed me the importance of education and how your education can enslave you or it can free you. And so I realized that I need to educate myself in addition to being educated by other people. So I started to educate myself. I started to read more and study the back history of everything I was being taught. One other great thing that he showed was the possibility of humanity, the possibility of man, because he went from nothing to being a great orator, a great leader. He founded like 70% of the first mosque in the Nation of Islam. That's not an exact number. I know some brothers in the nation, sisters in the nation may get on me about that number, but because of his fervor, because of his speaking abilities, he was able to galvanize tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to become a part of the Nation of Islam. I never joined the Nation of Islam, but there's power in that, in the teachings and how they transform the people. You can comment about how he says the white man's the devil and he's in hell. Our people are living in hell, but he would change crack addicts, drug addicts to upstanding, upright men. So that's undebatable. No one can deny that that's a miraculous feat. Whether someone is a devil or not, I don't really get down like that. I don't really I don't really subscribe to that. I believe that the devil and the angel is within. So anything that's manifesting outside of you is a reflection of what's going on inside you. As above, so below. As within, so without. Malcolm X, his life represents constant growth. That's why his book, his autobiography, changed my life. His autobiography changed my life because it represents constant growth, constant upward motion, constant movement. So he didn't just stop at one level. was constantly moving, constantly growing. And after he got out of prison, he started working with the Nation of Islam, and eventually he made the Hajj to Mecca, and he realized that the white man is not the devil, quote unquote. And as I stated, the devil is within. There is no devil without. There's only reflections of things that are going on without. But it made sense for him to believe and for him to profess that the white man was the devil, because some of the atrocities that have happened in North America, people like to demonize victims. So anytime somebody talks about slavery, or somebody talks about dogs eating young girls and things like that, people want to downplay it. That's a demonic act against humanity. If one group of humanity does that against any other group, I don't care what race they're in. So for me, that's why he was saying that they're devils, because of devilish acts. Now, he realized that just because there was a group of devils or people who are acting like devils within that race, that doesn't mean I can say that all people are devils, because I've met people in Mecca when he went across and made the Hajj that were honorable, even though on the surface they were honorable. But see, he developed his intuition, so he would be able to tell and read if this is an honorable person or not, because of, how refined he was. Because, you can't really know somebody that well after, a short period knowing, meeting them. But because he was so refined with his intuition, he could pick that up. So he transformed, he transcended, and he constantly grew. So that's one book that really changed my life, and it set me on a path of self-study, it set me on a path of refinement, and it set me on a path of dignity, you know what I mean? Of having self-respect as a young man coming up. He set me on a path of respect. I don't have to be loose. I don't have to be a criminal. I don't have to be, into petty fighting and petty crime and things like that. I can be upstanding, because here's an example of a man who went from nothing to something, from nothing to greatness. And so that's why Malcolm X, the Autobiography of Malcolm X, is a book that changed my life. A couple other things that allowed the Autobiography of Malcolm X to change my life was his autobiography showed the power of the human spirit to transform itself and to refine itself. It showed that there was no limits. You can go from the bottom of the barrel to the top of the pyramid, and he proved that. He proved that in his life. And another thing was, he showed the power of books, because there's a section in the Autobiography of Malcolm X where it showed how he read about world history, how he read about the history of religions, how he read about the history of science and mathematics, how he read about history of the U.S., how he read about just general science and mathematics, how he read about just endless topics. And he said, my alma mater was books. Alma mater is a school that you came from. So I realized the power of reading, and I realized the power of books by reading his book. And that's how it changed my life, because he became a professor. He became an adept because of his studying and the books that he read. He used to lecture and speak at Yale, at Berkeley, at all these universities, and he didn't even graduate from high school. He didn't even graduate. I think he went up to 8th grade, but it was because of all the studying he had did. So it showed me a level of studiousness and how powerful that studiousness actually is. So books that changed my life: Autobiography of Malcolm X, from Detroit Red to Malcolm X to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. It shows the power of discipline, the power of studiousness, the power of defining who you are and who you'll be, the power of persistence, and the power of discipline. That's one of the books that changed my life. Peace and blessings. Your brother, your friend, your dietitian, back again for another installment. Peace.